G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to do another automatic dive watch comparison. So these are a couple of watches I've reviewed recently, particularly the one on the left. This is the Seiko Samurai SRPB51. Thank you again to Graham who made this watch available. It's a watch that has actually taken up quite a lot of my wrist time in the last week or so, and I've really, come to appreciate the design, particularly the design and the quality of this piece. So I thought, well, look, it's a big watch. Why don't I compare it to this one? This is on the right here, the Steinhart Ocean 44 GMT. So this is the GMT black ceramic. Now ideally I perhaps should have tried to get my hands on a Ocean 44, the plain one, the three-hand watch, but in terms of size, quality, dimensions, really it's the same watch. It's just that it's got a different movement with the GMT hand here. So it's really very similar in dimension and feel, and so I thought this would be an interesting comparison, because I did a Steinhart versus Seiko before. This one I think will have a somewhat different feel, so it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. So just an overall view, these are both 44mm diameter watches. They're both quite heavy. This one is slightly heavier perhaps. They're both around the 180-185 grams mark, adjusted weight, so with the links taken off to fit my wrist. One is obviously a Japanese brand, the other one is kind of Swiss-German with a Swiss-made movement. They both are made of solid stainless steel, 316L steel. They both, of course, have screw-in case backs and crowns, and 200-meter or greater water resistance. In fact, the Steinhart does have a slightly higher resistance of 300 meters there, whereas the Seiko is a diver's 200-meter watch. Unidirectional, 120 click dive bezels, nothing else that you would expect, I think, at this level with these two watches. And they both have great lume. One is Seiko LumiBrite, the very good performing LumiBrite from Seiko, and this one is actually C1 Super Luminova. So they're both good lume, but quite different approaches. Different, I guess, value propositions that they bring to the table. In terms of how much they are, well, Seiko, this is an MSRP of $525 USD, but realistically you're getting it for just under 400. You can still get this for just under 400 USD, versus this one, the Ocean 44 GMT, is selling at 560 USD for a lot of their retailers. The Ocean 44 plain one, the non-GMT one, is about 520 USD. So in terms of actual retail price, they're about the same, but realistically you're getting that for under retail, whereas I don't think you can quite get it under retail. They do kind of control their prices pretty tightly. Seiko, yes, you're going to get it under the MSRP. So let's have a look at the comparison. So first up, of course, my usual 10 categories. The caliber. Okay, so Seiko, you've already heard me talk about this on the review. This is the 4R35. Yes, reliable, absolutely, well-known, very widely used, very widely loved, I should say, even, and proven up to this day. It is several years old now. It's been around for several years, and people, really find it a reliable movement, kind of what you expect from Seiko. But, in this case, I do have to give 7 to Seiko, 8 to Steinhart, because that's a Swiss Etter movement that really, I think there's very little controversy that this should be considered the better movement. This is an Etter 2893-2. The plain one, the three-hand one, would be a 2824-2, right? We're talking about 28,800 beats per hour versus 21,600. Similar power reserve around the 41-40 hour reserve. This one is quite capable of cost regulations. There are a lot of movements out there that are regulated to chronometer standard, whereas this one, I'm not sure whether it does get that. I mean, it's regulated pretty well. I got to give Seiko the credit for that, right? Sometimes it's regulated to perform as if it's a chronometer, but you know, there is a wider tolerance on the movement accuracy here. So you know, I think very little doubt. 8 for Steinhart, 7 for Seiko. Not much controversy there. Design, okay. Now in this case, I've given it to Seiko. This has audacity. It has, you know, those angles, the samurai motif, you know, that flat end link surface there. You know, look at the, you know, the hands, the, you know, these sharp angles, the shield, arrow, and sword motif of the dial. You know, it really suits the name that the fans have given it, the Seiko Samurai. You know, I really have enjoyed this one. I think Seiko clearly edges out on originality, audacity, as well as bezel. You know, I think this one has a slightly better bezel design. You know, it comes out the side here, and it's very easy to turn. It functions very well. You know, at least that's my opinion. Now the Steinhart, of course, is an homage. It's an homage of the Rolex Deep Sea. You know, that very famous over-engineered watch, and it's well executed. But you know, I think you have to not quite give it as many marks because it's an homage, but it's very well executed. Overall, I do think this one clearly edges out in this case. So I've given 9 because I really enjoy this. You know, that's somewhat subjective, but I really enjoy the design of the Seiko. Okay, next up, quality. Right. In this case, I think Steinhart, honestly, and this is really being very honest here, I think Steinhart execution wins out again. You know, the finishing, if you take a very close look at how they finish the transitions, for example, between polished and brushed, you know, just the fineness of the brushing, the consistency. I think if you have this in hand, it's very difficult to not see that the Steinhart finishing and quality, at least in that respect, is better than the Seiko. You know, I think, you know, if you look at the case back, the etching, it is better than, in my opinion anyway, of the rather more standard Seiko. I mean, yes, that is a relief of the tsunami in the middle, but Steinhart has, you know, deep etchings all the way through. Apologies, I've left a sticker on there because this watch doesn't actually belong to me. Okay, so I think in this case I've given it to the Steinhart. 8 for the Steinhart, 7 for Seiko. You know, Seiko, yes, absolutely fine. You know, it really is absolutely acceptable, and it does the job. And if you don't know better, I mean, you wouldn't know that you can achieve clearly a lot better than the finishing that they do. But I think looking at it closely, I do objectively have to hand it to the Steinhart here. Okay, next up, style. So, you know, I would say that Steinhart is borrowed, right? It's solid, but it is borrowed. It's, you know, certainly it's got its style, right? I mean, that's borrowed from Rolex. So I've given it 7. You know, you might knock a mark off further, but I guess that's my subjective opinion. I think it looks good, but you know, I'm not going to give it a very high mark because of those factors. The Seiko, well, you know, again, that samurai style, you know, just I really have liked this. I'm very tempted to get one of my own. In fact, you know, just the way that they've gone about this is one of the ones that I've enjoyed the most, and that's why I've worn it as much as I have. You know, just look at it. I mean, that. You know, again, the angular designs, the kind of armor plating ideas of those minute markings on that first 15 minutes of the bezel there. You know, I won't gush a bit more than that. You know, I'm not going to carry on. I really think this one clearly takes it. It's original as well. You know, that's really got to earn Seiko the win here. 8 for Seiko, 7 for Steinhart. Right, performance-wise, again, I've given it to Seiko, right? So the Steinhart, yes, it's got the 300 meters, right? So it's rated as higher. It does have sapphire as the glass, as opposed to Seiko having hard licks, but the Seiko is ISO certified. So this is an ISO 6425 diver. It does have, I think, even though this is C1 Superluminova, This has greater area of lume. So overall, I think this lume actually outperforms the Superluminova application of the Steinhart. That's my experience. And then the bezel visibility as well is better. I've complained about the bezel on the Steinhart being reflective and not not being very easy to see depending on the angle that you sometimes catch the light at, such as like that. I have to give the performance over to the Seiko. Additionally, it also has the dive suit extension on the bezel, on the bracelet, I should say, that you can see there. So overall, as a dive watch, which is what this is designed to be, performance goes to Seiko 7 to Steinhart 8 for Seiko. Next up, versatility. Right, I've given this a tie because they're both very big watches. They're 44 millimeters across. They're not conservative. They're actually quite, a little bit loud on the wrist. They certainly draw attention, both of them. I don't find either is less visible. They're both very much a watch that will be seen. So they're not quiet. So versatility, I've given 7 to both. I think that's also probably fairly even and not so controversial. Durability. Okay. Again, I've given this a tie. Now, why is that? Well, I think they're both pretty tough designs, right? This one's based on deep sea shape. This one is pretty muscular, with the angles and the amount of steel in those lugs there. 180 grams on the wrist, no slouch in terms of the amount of weight. They're both tough, right? The Seiko, I think, is slightly more muscular with the design, right? More steel in the lugs. But, the Steinhart does have the sapphire crystal as opposed to hardlex. So durability, I don't think I can separate it. I have given 8 to both. They're both engineered to be fairly tough watches. Value. Okay. Seiko is great, right? No doubt about it. For about 400 USD realistic price on the market, online retail, you're getting, a very nicely designed watch with an in-house movement, a reliable 4R35 movement, all the Seiko features of this ISO certification, their lume, their proprietary crystal, original design. I think the value is very, very good. I do have to give it to Steinhart though, I think in this case, because, for about 520 for the plain Ocean 44, I think you're getting more. It's because you're going for a Swiss movement that is, I think undeniably a better movement, a higher beat movement, cost capability, sapphire, and also a ceramic insert, don't forget that, So I think in terms of value, no doubt about it. Remember, the Steinhart is an elabore grade movement, so it's not a basic movement, and this is regulated to plus or minus 7 seconds a day. That is, certainly very well regulated. All the ones that I have had for elabore movements, they are regulated to within COSC, in fact. That's my experience with them. Okay, next up, brand. I got a bit of hit for this, for the last Seiko Steinhart comparison, and I think I probably wasn't very fair in the spread. I think you have to give at least 2-point spread to Seiko. I do agree with a lot of people who have commented after I reviewed and think about it again. I think you have to give at least 8 to Seiko. So much historical achievement. They have been there throughout really most of the 21st century, as well as the 20th century advances. Seiko is at the forefront. It's a household name. It is the biggest brand out of Japan and the East. You have to give at least 8. Some people might say it deserves 9. I've given 8 to Seiko anytime I've had a Seiko. Steinhart. In this case, I've chosen to knock another mark off, so I've given 8 for the brand because, yes, it is very new. It is only a 21st century brand. It is, relatively speaking, a baby, right? They don't make in-house movements like Seiko do. It's ETA in this case. They do, I think, put their best foot forward in terms of the value and the quality that they bring to the market, which is why a lot of people have started liking Steinhart. They do have their own following, but because of the, the lack of backing and track record and history, I've chosen to give 6 out of 10 in this case. Some people argue that, oh, well, you really got to knock a bit more. I don't think I can justify arguing a 5 out of 10. I've gone for 6. You can, I guess, argue perhaps you could go for 5, but I think, you know, that's around the ballpark there for the brand spread. 6 versus 7 in this case. All right, X Factor. In this case, also I've given it to the Seiko because you know, this really has something special. At least that's my feeling. And you know, a lot of fans, when they announced that this was coming back in 2017, after the short run in the 2004 to about 2008, there was a lot of interest in this, and I think there is really something special with this design, as well as coming from the company of Seiko. Steinhart. This one I find has been a little bit lackluster. Now, I've reviewed the OVM earlier. I think that one's a little bit more special because it homages something that you're very unlikely to be able to get your hands on. Even the other GMT, the titanium one, I think is also a little bit different. They've gone slightly their own way in the design. This one is a little bit more of a slavish homage, you know, slightly more slavish with copying the Rolex design. So I feel this is slightly less special. So I've given it only 6 out of 10 for the X Factor here. Okay, so let's look at what the totals are. You've been adding up and you get a feeling of who wins here, right? 78 for Seiko, 74 for Steinhart. That's, I guess, my opinion, my outcome from the scores that I've given for these categories. Let me know what you think. I'm very interested in, you know, if you have either of these watches. You know, I think they're both really excellent pieces, and I recommend both of them. So in summary, 2 excellent dive watches, different sectors of the world market, you know, Japan versus German Swiss, both excellent value. I think they both bring different propositions here. And the Steinhart again puts forward, you know, really compelling value. You know, 9 out of 10 I've given. It's got an excellent movement, Elabore grade, quality finishing, and sapphire with ceramic insert. But overall, I've given the win to the Seiko. It's convincingly taken it, you know, audacious design and style, better overall performance as a dive watch. It's got the name of Seiko and it's got the Samurai X Factor. I think, in my mind at least, this one's not so controversial. The Seiko, at least to me, clearly wins in this comparison. So guys, thank you again for watching. If you enjoy my videos, do consider subscribing. I put out new content every week, always learning new things about horology and aiming to be unbiased and objective. Thank you, and as always, I will see you next time.